It was a Tuesday in February when I got the call that changed everything, and I remember because I was sitting in the parking lot of a Walgreens in Raleigh, eating a granola bar for dinner, trying not to think about how tired I was. 7 years. That's how long I'd been working contract nursing, moving from city to city, 12-week assignments, sometimes longer, ICU floors, overnight shifts, hospital cafeterias that all smell the same, no matter which state you're in. I'd missed Christmases, birthdays, my cousin's wedding. I sent cards and gift cards and apology texts. I built a life that was entirely mine, in the sense that I was entirely alone in it, but also in the sense that every dollar I earned was clean. No one's name on it but mine. The call was from my mother. She didn't open with, "Hello." She opened with, "Your brother needs a place to land." I didn't answer right away. I watched a woman push a cart full of grocery bags through the parking lot. A little kid was running ahead of her, arms out like an airplane. "What does that mean?" I finally said. "It means what it means," she said. "He and Kelsey splits up. He's staying in a hotel. You know how hotels add up. My brother Marcus, 34 years old, 2 DUIs, a landscaping business that had been almost profitable for the last 5 years. Kelsey was his girlfriend of 4 years who had finally, apparently, done what everyone else saw coming. He can stay with you," I said. Silence. Then, "You know I don't have the space." My mother lived in a 4-bedroom house in Greensboro. I knew for a fact she'd turned one bedroom into a craft room and one into a space she called her prayer closet, which mostly held boxes of QVC purchases and a treadmill no one used. She had space. She just didn't want the inconvenience. "Mum, I'm on assignment in Raleigh until April. I'm not even home." "Right," she said. "Which is exactly why your place is just sitting there." I had bought the house 2 years earlier. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a neighborhood in Charlotte where I could hear kids playing outside in the evenings. I put down $40,000. I'd saved over 5 years of contract work. I'd done it alone. No cosigner, no family help, no one's name on the deed, but mine. I'd cried in the car after closing, not from sadness. From the specific relief of something being yours and only yours in a way nothing else in your life had ever been. "Mom," I said. "No." She exhaled like I'd just told her something in a foreign language. "He's your brother. I know who he is. You have 3 bedrooms and you're not even there. Having empty rooms doesn't mean. He's not going to break anything. He just needs 2-3 months." I should have said no again. I should have stayed firm. But she had a way of talking past the word no like it hadn't happened, filling the silence with more words until you forgot you'd said it at all. She mentioned our grandmother, who had passed 2 years ago, and how she'd always said family takes care of family. She mentioned how I'd been away so long I'd lost touch with what mattered. She mentioned my brother's drinking like it was something that had happened to him, not something he'd done repeatedly and without remorse. I gave in. I said 2 months, maximum, no parties, no subletting my house to anyone else. He would pay utilities and keep the place clean. She said, "Of course, thank you, sweetheart. I knew you'd do the right thing." I sat in that parking lot for a while after we hung up. The granola bar tasted like cardboard. The kid with the airplane arms was gone. I texted my brother the door code and told him the rules. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. I should have known then. The first sign came 6 weeks in. My neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Ortega who kept an eye on things, texted me a photo. A truck parked in my driveway I didn't recognize. 2 men carrying a couch through my front door. I called my brother. He let it ring twice, then answered like nothing was happening. "What's the truck?" I said. "Storing some stuff," he said. "It's just temporary. You can't move furniture into my house. It's just a couch. I had nowhere to put it. Marcus, you can't move things into my house. I'll move it when I get settled. Relax." I did not relax. I did not relax. I called my mother. She said I was being rigid. "He's going through a hard time," she said. "You could show a little compassion." I called my brother back and told him the couch needed to be out within the week. He said sure. It was still there when I came home in April. By April, temporary had metastasized into something I didn't recognize. There was furniture in the second bedroom that wasn't mine. The guest bathroom had someone else's toiletries. The kitchen had been rearranged. My good pots were on the wrong shelves. The one shelf in the living room where I kept framed photos had been cleared off and replaced with a Bluetooth speaker and a pile of mail that wasn't mine. My photos were in a box in the garage. I stood in my own living room with my duffel bag on my shoulder and felt like I was trespassing. My brother came in through the back door 10 minutes later, acting like this was normal. He'd put on weight. He looked comfortable. The kind of comfortable that takes months to build. "Hey," he said, "you're back early. I told you April," I said. "Right, yeah." He opened my refrigerator and looked inside. "You want to grab dinner? I found this wings place." "Marcus, we need to talk about what's happening here." He turned around holding a beer. "What do you mean?" I gestured at the room. At his furniture, his mail, the general shape of a life that had been quietly installed over mine. He shrugged. "I'm just staying here. You were supposed to be staying here for 2 months. It's been 3.5. Mom said you were okay with me staying longer." I stopped. "What?" "She called me like 3 weeks ago. Said you'd agreed to extend it another couple months since you were still on assignment." I had agreed to no such thing. I called my mother that night from my own bedroom, sitting on my own bed, looking at a closet that held 2 of my brother's winter jackets pushed into the corner. "I never said that," I told her. "I must have misunderstood," she said. Easy, smooth, the same tone she used my whole childhood when she'd been caught doing something and had decided to simply reframe it. "You said you weren't in a hurry to get back. I assumed. You don't assume things like that about someone's house." "Oh, Lauren." My name in her mouth like a soft correction. "It's not a big deal. He'll be gone by summer." "He'll be gone now," I said. She made a sound, not quite a gasp, something smaller, more strategic. "You would put your own brother out just like that. He was supposed to be there 2 months ago. He's getting back on his feet, Mom. This is my house. My name is on the deed. I pay the mortgage. He is a guest who has overstayed." "Family isn't a guest," she said. And she said it like it was wisdom. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay there listening to my brother watch television in my living room, the sound bleeding through the wall, and I thought about the $40,000 I'd saved shift by shift, holiday by holiday, all the years I'd worked while my brother coasted. I thought about the closing day, how I'd stood in the title company office and signed my name, and the woman across the table had said congratulations, and I'd wanted to cry. And then I had cried in the car. I spent the next morning going through the house. That's when I found the lease. It was in a kitchen drawer, tucked under a phone charger and some takeout menus. A 1-page agreement, dated 6 weeks earlier. My brother's name as tenant. A woman named Brittany as subtenant. Monthly rent. My address. My signature at the bottom. Except I hadn't signed it. The signature was close. Someone who knew my handwriting. Someone who had seen me sign things before. But it wasn't mine. I photographed it. Then I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, looking out the window at my small backyard where my brother's landscaping truck was parked on the grass, killing the lawn. Brittany, I found out later, was a friend of a friend. She'd been paying my brother $700 a month to rent the back bedroom of my house for 6 weeks. My brother had collected $4,200 and hadn't told me or deposited anything toward my mortgage. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Her name was Sandra, and she worked with a real estate firm in Charlotte. She had the kind of voice that made you feel like the situation was fixable without making you feel naive for being in it. "You have a forged lease and an unauthorized sublease," she said. "Both are serious. The forgery alone is criminal. What do I do? First, don't confront them yet. Get all the documentation together. Photos of the lease, photos of the house as it is now, any texts or voicemails that establish the original agreement. Then we move to formally serve notice." "He's my brother," I said, not sure why I said it. She was quiet for a moment. I know, she said. That doesn't change what's legally yours. I spent the rest of the day in the house methodically photographing everything: the furniture, the altered kitchen, the lease, the Venmo statements on my brother's phone that he'd left open on the counter, screenshots before he noticed, the box in the garage where my photos had been put. I photographed that too. My own photos, in a box, in my own garage. That night, my brother made pasta and acted like everything was fine. He poured me a glass of wine and asked about my assignment in Raleigh, whether the hospital was better than the last place. I answered in short sentences and tried to keep my expression neutral. I'd learned that in nursing, how to keep your face still when everything inside is moving fast. 2 days later, the formal notice went out. My brother called me approximately 6 minutes after receiving it. The pasta hospitality was gone. Are you serious right now? Yes, I said. You're serving your own brother with legal paperwork. You forged my signature on a lease, Marcus. I was just trying to cover my costs. You were collecting rent on my house without my knowledge. That's not covering costs. That's fraud. You don't even live here. That's not the point, and you know it. There was a pause. Then his voice shifted, quieter, almost soft, the voice he used when he'd run out of the aggressive approach. Lauren, come on. You know how hard things have been for me. I do know, I said. That's why I said yes. That's why you were there. So then why are you? Because you took something I didn't offer. He was quiet for a few seconds. When he spoke again, the softness was gone. Mom's going to lose her mind. Okay, I said. She did. She called that evening and didn't start with my name. She started with, "What is wrong with you?" I let her talk for almost 90 seconds before I said, "He forged my signature." Brief silence. Then, he was just trying to manage. "He forged my name on a legal document, Mum, to collect money from a stranger living in my house." You're always so dramatic. I almost laughed. Dramatic is a word for emotions. This is a legal fact. He is your brother. You don't call lawyers on family. He made it a legal matter when he put a fake signature on a lease. She pivoted fast, the way she always did when one angle stopped working. You have more than enough. You're a nurse. You make good money. Your brother is struggling. That's not permission. Lauren. The way she said it, like I was embarrassing her. Think about what kind of person you want to be. I'm thinking about it right now, I said. That's exactly why I made the call. She hung up. Then she called back twice. I let it go to voicemail. The next 2 weeks were the kind of ugly that doesn't involve raised voices. It's worse that way. It's the family group chat going quiet. Is aunts you haven't spoken to in 2 years texting you to say, "I heard what's happening, and I hope you can find it in your heart to be the bigger person." It's your mother posting vague things on Facebook about loyalty and blood that everyone who knows you knows are about you. It's your brother texting your old college roommate to check in on you in a way that's really asking her to talk you out of it. I turned the read receipts off on my phone and kept documenting. Sandra called on a Thursday. "Good news," she said. "He's agreed to vacate by the 15th. And we have grounds on the sublease for civil recovery of the rent he collected, $4,200. He'll likely settle to avoid the forgery charge going further." I sat down. "Okay. You did everything right," she said. "Most people in your position wait too long or don't document. You moved fast." "I've had good practice," I said. "Not with this specifically, just with learning to take things seriously when they happen." She laughed a little. "That's half of legal strategy right there. My brother moved out on the 14th, a day early. He didn't say goodbye. He took his furniture and the Bluetooth speaker and left a note on the counter that said, 'Figure you'll be happier alone anyway.' I folded it and put it in the documentation folder with everything else. Brittany had been gone by the 10th. She'd been embarrassed more than anything. She'd had no idea she was paying someone who didn't own the property. She sent me a text that said she was sorry and hoped I'd be okay. I thanked her and meant it. The day after he left, I woke up early and walked through every room, not anxious, just looking. I moved my photos from the garage box back to the shelf in the living room. I rearranged the kitchen back to the way I had it, the good pots back where they belonged. I found my favorite mug in the back of a cabinet behind 6 mugs I didn't own. I washed it and made coffee and stood at my kitchen window looking at the backyard. The grass was still dead in a rectangle where the truck had been. I'd need to reseed it in spring. That was fine, it was mine to fix. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired in the specific way you feel when you've been holding your breath for months and you finally stop. Not relief exactly, more like the realization that something that should have always been true was true again. My phone was quiet for about a week. Then my mother texted, "Your brother is not doing well, he's staying with me but he's been drinking again. I thought you should know." I read it twice. Then I put the phone face down on the counter and went back to my coffee. She texted again that afternoon. "I hope you're satisfied." I didn't respond. I had learned slowly and at some personal cost that responding to that kind of sentence was the trap. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't become ammunition. So I said nothing. 3 days later, my dad called. We didn't talk often. He and my mother had divorced when I was 12, and we had the kind of relationship that was cordial and a little distant, built mostly on birthday calls and the occasional lunch when I was passing through Greensboro. He wasn't a bad person. He was someone who had spent my entire childhood choosing not to rock any boats, and had passed that tendency to my brother while I'd gone the other direction entirely. "I heard about the situation," he said. "Okay," I said. "I'm not calling to take sides." "Okay," I said. "I'm not calling to take sides." "Okay, your brother's a mess." "I don't know what you want me to say about that. I don't think what he did was right." That surprised me. "Thank you for saying that. He has a problem," he said. "He's always taken the easy road wherever he found one. That's not an excuse. I'm just telling you I understand why you did what you did." We were quiet for a moment. "Your mother's upset," he said. "I know. She'll stay upset for a while." "I know that too." He exhaled. "You turned out stubborn as hell, you know that." "I get it from somewhere," I said. He laughed, short and a little sad. We talked for a few more minutes, nothing heavy, and then we said goodbye. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. I stood there after we hung up thinking about how strange it was that crisis sometimes shook loose the things that were actually true. The civil recovery settled in May. My brother agreed to pay back $3,500 of the $4,200. I accepted it. Sandra had told me I could push for the full amount, but that dragging it out would cost me more in time and attorney fees than the remaining $700 was worth. I agreed. Some fights aren't worth their full price. The check came in the mail from my mother's address. No note inside, just the check. I deposited it and put it toward the mortgage. A month later, I ran into one of my old co-workers at the grocery store, someone I'd done an assignment with in Winston-Salem 2 years back. She asked how things were, and I told her in vague terms, the kind you use in a grocery store. She said something I thought about for a long time afterward. She said, "The hardest thing about family is that they make you feel like protecting yourself is the same as hurting them." I thought about that standing in the cereal aisle for a moment longer than made sense. "Yeah," I said, "that's exactly it." The summer was quiet in the good way. I worked a local assignment at a hospital 20 minutes from the house. The first time in 4 years I'd been able to sleep in my own bed on a regular schedule. I reseeded the grass in the backyard. I repainted the hallway the color I'd always meant to. I bought a new shelf for the living room, wider than the last one, and arranged my photos on it and added some plants. I froze my credit. It was something Sandra had mentioned in passing, and I'd followed up on it. A credit freeze meant no one could open new accounts in my name without a PIN. It took 15 minutes across all 3 bureaus. I didn't know why I hadn't done it years earlier, probably because I'd never had reason to think about it before. I told a friend about it over dinner, and she said, "Isn't that a bit paranoid?" And I said, "Probably. Still worth it." My brother texted me in July. "Just 2 lines, I'm an outpatient now. Thought you should know." I sat with that text for a while before I answered. I typed and deleted a few things. Eventually, I sent back, "I hope it helps." Take care of yourself." He didn't respond. That was okay. Some conversations have done all they can. My mother and I didn't speak for almost 4 months. When she finally called, it was in August, and the call had the quality of something carefully rehearsed. She said she'd had time to think. She said she knew things had gotten out of hand. She said she hadn't handled it well. I let her talk. When she finished, I said, "I need you to understand that what happened wasn't something I did to Marcus. It was something I did to protect what's mine." "I know," she said, quieter than usual. "And I need you to understand that going forward, I'm not the person the family calls when someone else needs rescuing. I can't keep being that." Silence. "I know you think I have more," I said. "More money, more stability, more room. But having more doesn't mean I owe it to everyone else. I earned what I have on my own. That's something I've never asked anyone to acknowledge, but I am asking now." She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Okay," she finally said. Her voice was small. Not fragile small, more like reduced, like something had been let out of it. We talked for another 10 minutes about nothing important, the way families do when they're feeling their way back towards something. It wasn't warm. But it wasn't cold either. It was careful. I could work with careful. I didn't forgive her the way you forgive someone who made an honest mistake. I forgave her the way you forgive someone who did what they were always going to do, which is more like just deciding to stop carrying it. There's a difference. It matters. The folder with the documentation was still on my desk for a while. The lease photo, the Venmo screenshots, Sandra's correspondence, the settlement check stub. I kept meaning to file it somewhere. One evening in September, I finally went through it, organized it properly, put it in a labeled envelope, and put that in the filing cabinet with the mortgage papers and the deed. I closed the drawer and stood there in the quiet house. The evening light was coming through the front window at that angle. It gets in full, low and golden, hitting the floor in a stripe. I thought about the night I'd first come home to find the house changed. The displaced photos, the rearranged kitchen, the feeling of standing in my own doorway and feeling like I'd walked into the wrong place. I didn't feel that now. I put some water on for tea and sat at the kitchen table. The shelf in the living room had my photos on it, and some plants that had started growing well, and a candle I'd bought because I wanted it. The good pots were where I'd put them. The mug I liked was on the hook where it lived. Everything in the room was where it was because I'd put it there. I thought about what my coworker had said in the cereal aisle, about how protecting yourself can feel like hurting someone else, about how families can turn your own stability into a reason you owe them. I'd spent years believing that having more was the same as being responsible for everyone who had less. It isn't. I know that now. Having more means you built something. It doesn't mean you have to let people take it apart. The water boiled. I made the tea. I took it to the couch and sat there in the quiet that I had now finally learned not to apologize for. My house. My name on the deed, the mortgage, the utilities, every piece of paper that said this place existed, mine. There's something nobody tells you about being the responsible one in a family. They tell you it's admirable. They tell you you're strong, you're dependable, you've got your head on straight. What they don't tell you is that those qualities, in certain family dynamics, get read as availability, like a sign on a door that says open even when you never put it there. I spent 7 years building something, not just the house. Though that took the longest, the most discipline, the most Saturday nights eating granola bars in parking lots while everyone else seemed to be living their lives. I built a habit of self-sufficiency so thorough it became invisible to the people around me. My mother saw stability and thought resource. My brother saw an empty house and thought opportunity. Neither of them paused to think about what it had cost me to have either one of those things. That's the part that took me a while to understand. The forgery was the legal problem. But the thinking behind it, the part where my brother decided my house was available to him because I wasn't standing in it, that was the older problem, the one that had been building for years. When I found that lease, with a signature that almost looked like mine but wasn't, something shifted. Not into anger, though there was anger. Into clarity. There's a version of that moment where I call my mother first, where I let her talk me into a softer approach, where I spend 3 more months trying to manage something that had already crossed a clear line. I know that version because I've lived adjacent to it my whole life, choosing the quiet option to keep the peace, absorbing the cost so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. What I did instead was call a lawyer. And that single decision, choosing accuracy over harmony, choosing documentation over silence, is what changed the outcome entirely. Not because lawyers fix everything, but because when you treat a serious thing seriously, you stop being the only person in the room who knows how serious it is. Marcus didn't change because I fought back. I want to be honest about that. He went to outpatient, which I hope helps him, but that's his path, and he was going to have to walk it regardless of what I did or didn't do with the house. What changed was me. I stopped performing a role I'd been cast in without auditioning. The responsible one who absorbs, forgives, extends grace, opens her home, covers the gap. That role cost me more than the $4,000 he collected. It cost me years of preemptive apology, of shrinking my own needs to fit into what the family said I should be. And the strange thing, the thing I keep coming back to, is that no one asked me to do that. I just did it, because I thought that was how love worked. What I know now is that love without limits isn't love, it's just access. And there's a version of me that would have let my brother stay in that house indefinitely, would have called it generosity, would have slowly watched everything I built get used up by people who never had to earn it. That version of me would have been kind. She also would have been broke, resentful, and alone in a way that had nothing to do with not having people around. The house is mine again. The photos are back on the shelf. The grass grew back where the truck had been. I froze my credit and learned how to say no in writing with a lawyer's letterhead behind it. Small things, practical things. The kind of things that don't make for a dramatic story, but make for a livable life. Nobody in my family called me brave for any of it. They called me cold. They said I changed. What they meant was that I'd stopped being convenient, and I've made a kind of peace with that. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understood that caring about yourself is not the opposite of caring about other people. It just feels that way to the people who were benefiting from you not doing it.